There's a book, Corruptible, and they're on about the different countries. And say Denmark, it tends to have people that are really caring that go into government and they're not corrupt and everything. And in other countries, when it is corrupt, it's the personality types that's attracted because sometimes people believe that they've been manipulated and they were good going in. A lot of the times, that's the character that they are, and they find a system that will work for them, and that's how they get in. Regarding the voting, I don't vote. I mean, I'm in Poland anyway, but I've seen it. I watch politics all over the world and I say, I started studying sovereignty, common law, things like that. And it's like, you cannot push what you have your agenda because I didn't vote for you to push it on me. And it's very powerful because when they do come after you, they back off. So I have
Yeah, I
used
mean,
that myself.
it's an interesting thing because one of the things I talk about, I guess predictions, if you will, but like one of the things I talk about in the book is how democracy is really being overtaken by authoritarian capitalism. And a lot of people don't really understand what that means. But if you look at countries like China, who has a middle class, I believe over 700 million people, their middle class is larger than the entire population of the United States, right? I have friends who are Australian, who have lived in Singapore and UAE. These are, Singapore, I believe, is technically a democracy, but they've had like the same ruling power, ruling party for so many years that when I say it's a democracy, people are kind of like, oh, but the point is that but the point is that people in those countries, if they're happy, I mean, my friend who was Australian, I was talking with her, and she'd lived in Singapore for like a decade. She was moving to UAE, and I said to her, I was like, "Do you even miss voting? Do you even notice that you don't vote?" And she said, "No, to be honest, I've lived in countries that made my life easy and good enough that I didn't care. Like, as long as they were run well, as long as they didn't come after me, as long as they kind of left me alone to have a good life and made it easy for me to run my business and, do." And you know, there is this trend of authoritarian capitalism that's winning. And the good thing about that is when it's a benevolent dictatorship and it's heavy on the benevolence. The problem with that is, to your point, when those scales turn and all of a sudden it's really heavy on the dictatorship and not so heavy on the benevolence. And then you've lost your right to do anything about it peacefully from a voting perspective. And then you're just some person living in a country, probably without weapons and probably without any functional way to make change. And I think a lot of the world doesn't realize how much of the global population isn't living under democracies, isn't living under choice. And if we lose that, if authoritarian capitalism basically takes over, then it's a question of, well, where do you want to live that has the best authoritarian or that has the most favorable tax regime or stays out of your life or isn't, or you're not worried they're going to kick in the door every day. But all of these regimes that aren't democracies, they're really, really great until the day that they're not and you disagree with it and you have no mechanism for disagreement. And that's a scary thing for some of us who grew up in democracies, especially for those of us who grew up in the United States with the idea, granted, the idea, maybe not the reality, of what was supposed to be the city on the shining hill, what was supposed to be a place for liberty and freedom and equality and all of the things that the beautiful social experiment that America was and should have been are kind of eaten up by the realities of unfettered capitalism. And anything in extremes, butchering Marcus Aurelius, but anything in extremes is generally not sustainable and not good long term. So I worry about that, especially as an American.